every market needs to have what are called 5 must-haves. And so the first market must-have is you want the market to be evergreen. And what that means is you want to find a market that was relevant decades ago and is relevant decades from now.
This is Experts Unleashed, revealing how professionals and entrepreneurs transform experience into income while positively impacting the world. For years, Joel Urway has helped entrepreneurs develop and launch their expert-based businesses, growing them beyond 6 and even 7 figures a year. Now, a professional expert serves their community through paid training, education, or service. This podcast will help you design and execute your plan to become a 6 or 7 figure expert without a massive team. To get more information or apply now, visit theperfectexpert.com. Let's get started.
Hey, what's going on, experts? It's Joel Urway here. Welcome to another very special episode of Experts Unleashed. And oh man, you guys are in for an amazing episode today. I've got a very special guest on our show today, Ryan Levesque, who is the author and founder of some excellent companies. We're going to be talking about a new book that he's got coming out. Ryan is the Inc. 500 CEO of the Ask Method Company and the #1 national best-selling author of Ask, which was named by Inc. as the #1 marketing book of the year. That's right, #1 marketing book of the year. His work has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, Forbes, and Entrepreneur, and over 250,000 entrepreneurs subscribe to his email newsletter offering business advice. He's also a co-founder and investor in Bucket.io, a leading marketing funnel software for entrepreneurs. And his latest book, Choose, helps readers avoid making the single biggest mistake when starting a business and guides people through answering the all-important question, what type of business should you start? Ryan, welcome to the show.
Joel, my man, it's awesome to be here. Really appreciative and excited to dive right in.
So I want to connect my listeners right now, my audience, with kind of my experience with you, Ryan. And even though this is our first time talking, virtually or, person to person, Ask, the first book that you wrote, was actually like probably one of the first 2 or 3 marketing books that I ever invested in. And it was the first book that I ever gifted to somebody. So you have that honor in my
wow,
in my
that's
library.
so cool. That's so cool.
Yep. So when I was first getting started in the online marketing space, this is probably, when did you write Ask? When did that come out?
Ask came out in 2015.
Okay. Yep. So I was going to say about 3 to 4 years ago when I bought it, and that lines up perfectly right when the launch happened. So it was one of the first marketing books that I purchased. And so I'm very much excited to chat with you about Choose, the new book, and really just talk about all things related with choosing markets and making sure that you're set up for guaranteed success.
Awesome. Sounds great. And that's great. It's so cool following your success. I had no idea because I, knowing you from being in my world and everything like that, I just assumed based on your, meteoric rise that like you were already midstream. Like you were already doing awesome things. You were already a pro. So man, you've come really far, really fast. That's, you should be proud of that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, fluffing up the interviewer. I know what you're doing.
It's all flattery will get you far in life.
That's right.
Anyways, hit me with the hard hitting questions here. I'm ready to answer whatever we got.
Yeah, well, let's kind of start from the genesis, right? So I want to give people a background if they haven't heard of Ryan Levesque, the great Ryan Levesque. So tell us about how you got started, like your venture into entrepreneurialism, starting your own business. And I know this is going to segue perfectly into where we're going. So let's start there.
Totally. Yeah. So in around 2005, 2006, I was working a corporate job. I was in finance and I was actually living in China. And I had what I thought was my dream job, right? Like many of us got that climbing the corporate ladder. And I was in this really cool job, but I was traveling all the time. I was on a plane every other week. I was living at hotels. I was married at the time, but my wife was doing a graduate program in Hong Kong. I'm based in Shanghai. We have this crazy bi-country marriage. We see each other like once or twice a month. And I have a friend who comes to visit me in Shanghai, and he tells me how he's making money. And he's making money on the internet. And I couldn't believe it. And he says, you got to read this book. And on a whim, on a trip to Malaysia, I decided to download on Audible this new book. I didn't know anything about it. It was called The 4-Hour Workweek. And on this trip to Kota Kinabalu, Malaysia, I was so not present. My wife wanted to kill me because the whole trip, I was just fixated with the earbuds in my ear, the headphones in my ear at the time, and just listening to this book. And so I got back and I was just open to this whole world that I didn't even realize existed. Fast forward a few years later, it's 2008. World financial crisis hits. And I wake up one day, get into my office, and the Wall Street Journal Asia edition sitting on my office desk. And the company I was working for at the time was AIG. And the headline that day literally read, AIG to file for bankruptcy. That day I called my wife. I say, honey, I think I'm going to quit. I think now's the time. This is a sign. This is the sign I've been waiting for. So I write up my resignation letter, turned it into my boss before I lost the courage to do it, gave my 2-week notice, sold everything I owned except for a suitcase of stuff, moved in with my wife and in student housing. She was a PhD student in student housing. And we started our first tiny little business. And it was in the most random, obscure markets, Joel. It was teaching people how to make Scrabble tile jewelry. That was the first business I started. It was the first sale I ever made online. And gosh, this is 2008. So that's how it all got started. That's the genesis.
Yeah. So Scrabble tile jewelry. It's amazing how many people have that connection to the 4-hour work week in the world of online business, right? It's like the Bible. Like that is the launching point of so many successful entrepreneurs of recent, I should say. So awesome. All right. So Scrabble tile jewelry. Why?
Don't judge me. It's a thing.
Yeah, that's all right. I don't want to even admit the different markets that I entered when I first started, but where did that come from?
Yeah, so at the time there was a brand new website that had just been created. It was a site my wife was really big into, and it's Etsy.com. Now, Etsy at the time was a tiny little website. It wasn't the big behemoth that it is today. Anyone listening to this, if you're not familiar with Etsy, most of us I know are. It's like eBay for handmade products. So if you knit, crochet, if you make crafts, if you do pottery, if you make paintings, things like that, it's a platform to sell those products. And one of the products at the time that was just exploding was jewelry made with Scrabble tiles from the game Scrabble, origami paper glued onto the tiles and applied with resin. So it looked like a porcelain tile that you would put on a pendant around, typically women wearing it around their neck or a charm around their bracelet, that sort of thing. And so my wife sees this and she said, this thing is crazy. And listen, we're in China. We have access to all this origami paper. We have access to all this inexpensive labor. We can set up a factory here in China and make these things and import them into the US. And I said, honey, I don't want to do that. Like that's going to tie us to China. We're going to have a factory. Like we want to start a location independent business. We want to travel the world. And so we killed the idea. And about a week or two later, she comes back to me and she says, Ryan, I think there's something to the Scrabble tile thing. I was like, honey, I thought we killed that idea. Like, why are we still talking about this? She said, no. Time out. There's this woman. She's not selling the jewelry. On Etsy, she's teaching people how to make the jewelry, selling this PDF. And get this, she's charging like $30 for this thing, and she's selling like 20 of them a day. And then we did the math real quick, and it was like, crap, she's making like $600 a day. This is crazy. And so we bought the product. It wasn't very good. And we decided to build a better mousetrap. So my wife got all the supplies, learned how to make the jewelry. We built a better tutorial. We started selling it on our website, started selling physical tutorials on eBay, created a website we're selling on AdWords. And at our peak, we're making $10,000 a month in this tiny little obscure niche market. We said, we're on our way. Like, this is it. Like, this is so easy. And then like a couple months later, what I didn't realize, and it's a lesson that I share in my new book, Choose, the importance of choosing an evergreen market. Because this market, Joel, was just a fad and it literally fell off a cliff. And 3 months later, we were back to square one. We weren't making any money at all, except this time we're basically burned through our savings. I wasn't working a job, so I had no income. And my wife was just finishing her PhD program. And we had this kind of moment where we looked at each other and we said, oh crap, what do we do next? And so we moved back to the States. She got a job as a museum curator. Her background is in history and art history. So she's not like in one of these professions that's known for making a lot of money. So her job, which is an amazing job, paid $36,000 a year. We moved to Brownsville, Texas, right on the Mexican border. She works at the Brownsville Historical Association. And I took the lessons I learned from that first kind of practice business to start my first real business, which we then took from nothing to $25,000 a month in 18 months. And that's the thing that kind of kicked it all off. It's what started it all off. It was the first of 23 different markets that we went into over the last 10 years. And, gosh, today My goal when I quit my job, Joel, I tell people this, my goal was I want to make $10,000 a month. That was like my big goal. It's like, if I can make $10,000 a month in passive income, I'll never want to work another day of my life. Like, who could ever want more money than that? Like, that was like my big thing. And so that was my big goal. And then this past year, we just passed $10 million a year in our business. We landed on the Inc. 500, fastest growing companies in America. And it's been a journey. And the lessons that I've learned along the way, all the markets we've gone into, the students that I've helped go through this process of starting the right business, choosing what market to go into, and the research that went into that is the topic of this new book, which is the prequel to Ask, and we're super excited about it.
One of the things that you mentioned, Evergreen Markets, and I think this is super, super critical. You said it's talked about inside of your book. I think it's important for us to kind of go a little bit deeper on that because, with what you experienced with, the Scrabble tile jewelry market, it was a fad, right? And the biggest thing that entrepreneurs have to avoid is that roller coaster, that all terrifying roller coaster of up and down and up and down and up and down. Totally. So can you share a couple lessons you learned of really what mistakes you made when you chose that first niche and how you learned to spot future evergreen markets? Because I think that's really, really critical.
Yeah, so having an evergreen market, it's something I teach in the book. There are 5 market must-haves. And so what I've learned over the years and what I've seen that separate the students that I work with, the entrepreneurs that I work with who are successful and those who struggle, come down to having a market that has these 5 things. And I discovered this by reverse engineering all my successes, all my failures, all my students' successes and all their failures in the process. And then also looking at, and this is really what the impetus of the whole, the book came from, is looking at people who read Ask, the book that we talked a little bit about that you read. That was one of your first books. What was it that separated the people who read the book, implemented, and were successful, and the people who read the book, implemented, and failed? That was the thing that broke my heart the most, right? People followed the methodology and they still failed. And it all came down to one thing. They chose bad markets. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean, a bad market? Like, we say you got to choose the right niche. You got to choose the right market. Well, how do you break that down into a science? That's what the book's all about. And the first thing that you just touched on, which I think is important, is the fact that every market needs to have what are called 5 must-haves. And so the first market must-have is you want the market to be evergreen. And what that means is you want to find a market that was relevant decades ago and is relevant decades from now. So Scrabble tile jewelry was a fad. If you look at a lot of the fad diets right now, you see their trends and they trend up and then they fall off a cliff. A perfect example of this that many of us experienced not too long ago was Bitcoin. Remember when everybody was talking about Bitcoin and it just was you couldn't go on Facebook or social media or online with every post about Bitcoin? Well, What's crazy, if you go to Google Trends, it's one of the things tools that I like walking people through in the book. If you go to Google Trends and you type in Bitcoin, you're going to see that it goes up, 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 and it falls off a cliff. And that search volume that you're looking for in Google Trends, that's how many people are searching for that term, is exactly in line with the price of Bitcoin. So it fell off a cliff. So if you're building an entire business around Bitcoin, gosh, you're setting yourself up for a difficult future. So you're looking for markets that are stable, over decades. And Google Trends is a great tool. It's a free tool. It's been around, I believe, since 2006. So you can now get a decade worth of data to see your market. And so the first thing is an evergreen market. So that's what you're looking for. Second thing that you're looking for is an enthusiast market. Now, enthusiast market, what that means, as opposed to, especially, and I know many of your listeners, Joel, sell what we call in our world education and expertise. What that means is everything from digital products, ebooks, and courses to consulting, coaching, and masterminds, to membership sites and continuity programs, to live events, workshops, boot camps, that sort of thing, the whole gambit. And if you sell education and expertise, especially, you want to be looking for an enthusiast market as opposed to what we call a problem solution market. Now, problem solution market is a market where someone goes in, they solve a problem, and then they move on with their life. Now, an example of that would be something like mold removal. If you got mold in your house, you search for a solution online, you solve that problem. You never want to think about that ever again. You're not signing up for a newsletter. You're not joining the mold removal club or a Facebook group. You're done with it. Now, contrast that with the dog market, for example. So we've got a little dog, so I know how crazy dog owners are. The dog market is
they're nuts.
Yeah, exactly. So people, an enthusiast market, what you're looking for is a market in which you can find one customer and sell multiple things to that one customer over time. So in the dog market, for example, if you help people train their dog, after you've trained their dog, they want the doggy collar, they want the doggy bowl, they want the food, they want pet insurance, they want to teach the dog tricks, they want to teach the dog to stop barking. And so that's an example of a market where you can sell to the same customer over and over and over again. Now, the third thing that I see people making mistake of is they find an evergreen enthusiast market and they're in with the customer isn't focused enough. You want to be looking for number 3 on this list is solving an urgent problem in the context of that enthusiast market. So for example, in the dog market, an urgent problem is the dog's peeing on the rug, right? It's a problem that people search online to find a solution, and they need that solution now. They're not super price sensitive to finding a solution. They want the thing right now. So in the dog training markets, dogs peeing on the rug. The business that we took, the first real business that we took from nothing to $25,000 a month, everyone wants to know what market was that. That was the orchid care market. So orchids as in the flower. And in that market, the urgent problem is my orchids' flowers are falling off. What did I do? Did I kill it? So they think their orchid's dying and they want to save it. I tell a story of Dana Olbermann and Mike, her husband, who have a business called Sleep Sense. And they teach people how to get their infants to sleep through the night. That's an urgent problem, right? If you've got young kids or you had young kids, you know what it's like. You're not sleeping at night. You and your spouse are just like, going crazy. So those are examples of urgent problem in the context of an enthusiast market. And it sets you up to be the trusted advisor in that market where they say, Joel, I can't believe what you've done for me. What about this next thing? What do you recommend? What do I do next? So that's the third thing you're looking for. So we got evergreen, enthusiast, urgent problem. Third is future problems. Fourth is future problems. So it's not enough to just have a market where you solve one problem and then everything is done. You want a market in which you can solve that urgent problem as a starting point. But then when you think about your upsells, other products that you sell down the road, what other things can you help people with? So in the dog market, you help the dog stop peeing on the rug. You solve that problem. Now they want to know how to get the dog to stop barking or how to get the dog to stop biting. And there's a whole host of things that you can help people with in that market. So future problems, number 4. And the fifth one is, this is one I see a lot of people make this mistake. They spend a lot of time selling to people who are broke. They sell to people who have no money to invest in what it is that you want to help people with. And so what you're looking for is a phrase that I learned from the late, great Gary Halbert. For anyone not familiar, he's one of the greatest copywriters, direct response copywriters of all time. And he had this phrase that he taught, he called them PWMs. PWM stands for players with money. Yep. You're looking for a market that has evidence of PWMs. And players with money doesn't necessarily mean millionaires or billionaires. What it means is these are people who will spend a disproportionate amount of money in that specific area of their life. Now, they don't need to be rich to be able to do this. They'll just put a lot of money into that area. So the quintessential example is golf, right? Golf is one of these hobbies that people will sink so much money into between the equipment, the clubs, the clothing, playing on
greens fees, golfing, membership fees.
Greens fees. Yeah, vacations, trips, masters experience, golf cruise around the world. People spend ungodly amounts of money on that hobby. So you want to be looking for, and if you have a market that doesn't have evidence of those 5 things, evergreen, enthusiast, an urgent problem you can solve, future problems, and PWMs, players with money, then chances are you're giving yourself an uphill battle towards success. And so there are 5 things that you want to be looking for before you choose your market and before you start your business.
Yeah. I can attest to number 5, players of money, because the very first market that I jumped into was the engineering career development niche. My background was in engineering. And when I first jumped in, I wanted to help people level up their careers. And so I started this course and I wrote a book on how to level up the career. And so I did a webinar on how to ace your job interview. Well, what I was doing was I was attracting all broke people, all unemployed people. And it was so difficult. And it took me a long time to figure out that I was marketing that angle with the interviews. I was attracting all the people who didn't have a job versus going from employed to the next level up, which is really who I was trying to target. But number 5 is so critical. I mean, that can make or break. I mean, all of these are great. All of these are fantastic, but you have to market to people with money. You have to market to people with money.
It's so important, this choice of choosing the right market the subtitle of the book is the single biggest decision before starting your business. And the biggest mistake I see people make when they're starting a new business, or at that point where they're like, I want to do my own thing. I want to start my own company. I want to go off my own, is all the conventional wisdom out there is to spend your time focusing on what to create, what to sell, what to build. When the reality is you want to first begin by starting with who. Who are you going to serve? And there's a metaphor I use in the book. It's something I use with my students. I think it's really helpful to kind of really crystallize this in your mind. It's like this. Deciding what business to start, where to go, is like putting your boat in a raft in a river. Mm-hmm. And you can have the best raft. You can have the most expensive equipment. You can have the best crew. You can paddle 18 hours a day, bust your butt to get to your destination. But if you've put your raft pointed in the wrong direction, you're never going to get to where you want to go. Or worse yet, you put your raft in a river that doesn't have any water in it, you're never going to get to where you want to go. And what I found with Ask and with so many entrepreneurs is that there's so much focus on paddling as hard as you can, so much focus on the right equipment, so much focus on the fanciest boat, but there's not enough time focused on making sure that boat's in the right direction. And really that's what this is all about. It's making sure you're putting your boat, your raft, in a river that's going to propel you forward, that's going to take you to your destination, where you've got the momentum of that current at your back taking you to success, as opposed to having to kill yourself paddling upstream, wondering, why am I not going anywhere? And what you just described right there, trying to sell to broke people, is one piece of that makes you wonder, why is it so hard? There has to be a better way. And the answer is, there is a better way. It comes down to choosing the right market.
That's right. I want to ask you a question because you've got your two methodologies. You've got choose and you've got ask, right? And I want to make sure I get this timeline correct. Did you successfully enter 23 different markets before you created Ask? Was that before you launched Ask?
Yeah, the answer is yes. So I went to 23 different markets before Ask. And the mistake I made with Ask is I assumed people had made the right choice of a market. What I failed to teach in Ask was how I chose those 23 markets in the first place. And the reason why I wrote the book, and I touched on this, was because, there are stories of guys like Jamal Miller, read the book, went from making $17 an hour to $500,000 in his first year. It's been featured in Forbes. Incredible story. Charlie Wallace read the book. He had a fledgling business, a guitar training business, took that business to $2.5 million a year, basically following what I teach and Ask. But for every story of Jamal and Charlie, there were other stories of people who said, Ryan, they'd write me letters, right? I followed the process. I did exactly what you taught, and I still didn't succeed. What did I do wrong? What I found when I started digging into those stories was that the common trend is that kind of what you were running into. People followed the process to the letter. They were great students. They were great executors, but they made one fundamental mistake. They went into markets that were bad markets. And so I embarked on the last 3 years of a research project to basically really dig in to what mistakes people were making, putting it into a framework to help decide what type of market to go into that takes into account things like your skill, your experience level, your lifestyle goals, the amount of funding that you have available, all of these different things. In fact, we have an assessment that is in the book that helps you decide what type of business to start based on all of these factors. You don't even need the book. There's a can I share the link to the
go ahead.
Assessment? Yeah, it's free. It's totally free online. Just go to Choose Quiz. So choosequiz.com, and it's how to choose what type of business to start based on all of these different things to help guide you in the right direction. And it was that fundamental piece that I left out of Ask that I realized was the missing piece for so many people who are at this stage of trying to figure out what to do next, what business to start, what business to expand into, what niche to go into, and so on and so forth.
When you went into these other markets, the 23 markets, like I want to talk before Ask, I want to know, like, when in your mind did you realize like you had a knack for knowing, like you made the first mistake? It wasn't a mistake. You made money in the Scrabble tile jewelry business, right? But then you successfully entered 23 different markets. Like, when did you know the importance? I mean, was it, quite frankly, after the trend died with Scrabble tile jewelry, that you knew that you had to figure out how to, in your words, point the raft in the right direction? Like, when did you realize that like that was so so critical. And like, that was probably the most important step.
What's interesting is every one of the 23 markets has taught me a lesson.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. So you talked about the players with money lesson. My next business after the orchid business, so it was Scrabble tile jewelry, then it was orchid care, then it was memory improvement. Why did I go into memory improvement? Well, I did two businesses that were totally unrelated to my college education. In college, I studied neuroscience. So that was like my major. And my parents kept bugging me saying, what the hell are you going to do with the education that you just went through? So I said, I'll do something with it, right? I'll do a memory improvement business. And I'll teach people memory techniques and how to improve their memory. And so I created this business. It still exists today. It's called Rocket Memory. It's a series of courses that help you improve your memory. Everything from remembering names and faces to facts and figures to biblical scripture and sort of everything, right? So created this business, and I learned the hard way that my market didn't consist of PWMs. Now, the business made money, right? It made money for a season, but it was an uphill battle because I realized that so many of my customers were grad students who were studying for, their graduate exams, or undergrads studying for MCATs and LSATs and things like that. And they had no money. I mean, when I was a college student, I probably had like a couple $100s in my bank account at most. Yeah. How are they going to afford to invest in like a $200 or $300 or $400 or $500 online course designed to improve their memory? So I learned a lot of these lessons the hard way, Joel. And really what I took was every time I went to a new market, I realized, okay, the next one I'm going to pivot. I'm looking for something else. I realized, okay, the next after a Scrabble tile, it was look for an evergreen market. After memory improvement, it was look for a market with PWMs. And so it was through that process. And I had some failures along the way. And I talk about some of those failures in the book. So, one of the biggest mistakes I made was when I thought I didn't need to follow my own process. I just said, I'm Ryan Levesque. I know what I'm doing. I had maybe a dozen or so successes under my belt. And I was like, all right, anything I touch is going to turn to gold. So I went into the pest control market. I thought I was going to do education and expertise in the pest control space. Started that market. I went to that business and I invested over $70,000 before making a single dollar in that market. And I had to throw the towel in. And I realized my mistake. I look back at the markets I made mistakes in. I just didn't have the wisdom or the experience at the time to know that it was a bad decision. But now I've been doing this for a decade, and I've learned a lot of things along the way, made a lot of mistakes along the way. I've worked with a lot of students now in this time, and I've seen that it's the same few mistakes every single time. And if you avoid those mistakes, you set yourself up for success.
What would you say is your favorite success story from one of your students who kind of took this concept and ran with it? Could be either ask or implementing, the choose technique or is it the choose method or choose technique, or is it just
choose method? Yeah, no, it's a choose method. So if you have the ask method, so, it starts with, the first step is to choose.
Yep.
The next step is to ask once you've chosen. And so, so one that comes to mind is this. So there's a framework I teach in the book, and it's the fact that I've discovered there's really 4 types of entrepreneurs. What I call mission-based, passion-based, opportunity-based, and undecided. So the mission-based entrepreneur, if you're listening to this right now, is a type of person that has a cause they die on the hill for, right? So they would, they have something that they believe is their mission in life, and they want to transform that into a business. Passion-based is someone who has a passion like fishing or guitar or art or something like that, and they want to inject that passion into their business. So they want to, like Charlie, for example. Charlie, the guitar guy, he loves guitar. He wanted to teach people guitar. The opportunity-based entrepreneur is like Dana and Mike, the couple that I mentioned that help parents with young infants sleep. So opportunity-based entrepreneurs are the type of person who, you see something in the world and you're like, wait, how come nobody's ever solved that? Like how come nobody's created anything like that? I've got to do that, right? And then the undecided entrepreneur is the person who says, I know I want to start a business. I know I want to do my own thing, but I have no idea where to even begin. And so the undecided, that's where I was. Like, I knew I wanted to do my own thing, but I had no idea. It wasn't until my wife said, just pick a damn thing, do the Scrabble tile thing, that we decided to, we started making progress. So for undecided entrepreneurs, by the way, as an aside, I'll answer your question here in a second. I recommend that you start with something that I teach in the book called the practice business. So I think we get so hung up on picking the perfect business, picking the perfect niche. We think it's going to be our life's work. And I share the story. One of my mentors said, Ryan, if you just reframe the money you're investing in your business as tuition, you either win or you learn. And it hit me really hard because I said, I could go get an MBA, spend $250,000, $250,000 at a top school, get an MBA, or I could take a tiny fraction of that, invest that in my business, go through the school of hard knocks, and I'm probably going to learn more in the process, actually doing as opposed to sitting in a classroom, and just not getting hung up on picking the perfect business, just getting started with something. So to answer your question, the story that really comes to mind is if we go back to that mission-based entrepreneur, there's a story I tell in the book of Christie Kennedy. So Christie, incredible woman, right? So she overcame some incredible obstacles. And one of those obstacles is she had a husband who was bullied as a child, and then as an adult had bullied her and her children. And she ended up having to leave her husband. And one of her children, who's autistic, was bullied in school in a huge way. And it was one day where she made this decision. She said, you know what, I'm going to do something about this. And from that moment, she decided to build a business called Be Friendly. And this business has evolved into this movement where she has a traveling assembly that goes into schools around the country. And she's now been into something like 10,000 schools around the country. Traveling assembly, which is designed to help kids stop bullying, help students, teachers give them the tools they need to stop bullying. And this is elementary school students, administrators to do the same thing. And it's all because she had this mission in her life that she wants to rid schools of bullying. Like that's her life's mission. She wants to get rid of that. And when I hear stories like Christie's and other stories just like that of people who are drawn to a mission, drawn to making an impact, whatever that impact may be, for me, that's what makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up, right? That's the thing that gets me excited. It's why I wrote this book, because I know there are people out there that have something that they want to change the world with, whether it's in a small way or a big way, whatever it is. And this hopefully will be an important tool in that process to get that process going. So Christie's story is one that just warms my heart. And I share it in detail in the book and how she did it and all that good stuff.
Love it, man. That's a great story. That's a great testimonial and great, a great case study. So what I want to do now is I want to kick it back into our rewind section. So we talked about a lot of great stuff with the choose method and with ask and, choose before ask. And there was a ton of great content. I'm going to do a recap at the end of the show, but I want to kick it back into the rewind section. I really want to focus on, because my firm belief with Experts Unleashed is that all successful entrepreneurs have to know how to spot and create and seize opportunity. And actually it aligns very much with choosing, it's that method of, being able to choose the right opportunity to go after, right? Where in your entrepreneurial ventures did you see, either an unexpected opportunity or where was kind of one of the biggest pivot points in your success? Can happen at any time during your career, but where would you say is one of the biggest pivot points in your entrepreneurial career?
So there was this aha moment I had, and I'll share it. Something I share in the book, where I looked at every single one of my most successful businesses up until this point. And it's a process I teach in the book where I took what's called the Bullseye Keyword for that business. It's a process that I walk you through how to come up with your Bullseye Keyword. I put that Bullseye Keyword into Google Trends. And I put in the next Bullseye Keyword for my next market, my next market, and my next market. I did the same for my most successful students' markets as well. And what I found was incredible. There's this incredibly narrow band in keyword volume that every single one of those businesses fit into. And when I saw it, I shared this discovery with one of my colleagues. We looked at it, we couldn't believe it. And we've since called it the Rosetta Stone of keywords. And it's been this discovery that I know with confidence that if you want to be successful, you want to find a bullseye keyword for your business that fits within this narrow band. You don't want one that's too big or too small. And when I found this, it was like I cracked this code. And so every business that I went into thereafter made sure that the bullseye keyword fit right within that narrow band. It's something that was like one of my biggest secrets. I was so debating whether I was actually going to teach this and share this in the book, because it's kind of like Coca-Cola going out or Elon Musk saying, we're just going to give all the source code for Tesla. We're just going to make it open source and just give it to the world. It was like that decision. And we decided to just include what the keywords are, how to do this process, the whole thing in the book. And so for me, that was one of these pivotal moments, to answer your question, where it just, everything changed. It felt like I was given the master key to unlock any door. And the cool thing is, we decided to include that in the book.
So we said in this narrow band, you're talking about keyword volume. So it has to fit within a certain volume range and in monthly search results?
Exactly. So you're looking for a certain keyword volume in search results, not too big, not too small. This is specific. Now, this doesn't work for every type of business out there. This works specifically if you are looking to sell education and expertise. Mm-hmm. So in any of those businesses, we talked about digital courses, consulting, online membership sites, boot camps, workshops, events, that sort of thing. It doesn't necessarily work if you're looking to become the next Nike, or if you've got $10 million in funding. But if you're a bootstrapped entrepreneur and you're listening to this show right now, and you're the type of person that wants to start your own thing and you want to tap into selling education and expertise, it is the sweet spot. It is what we call the market size sweet spot that you want to be in, absolutely. And if you have a market that's too big, it's either a red light, or too small. It's a red light, but if you're in that band, it's a green light market. And there are a series of tests, or 7 tests that we go through in the book that you want to make sure your market is a green light on before you say, all right, we're going all systems go on this thing. And that is one of those key tests.
Awesome. Now, out of curiosity, what happens if I think it's self-explanatory. If you're below the keyword volume, then obviously the demand isn't there. But why if you're above that band?
Yeah. So if you're in a market that's too big, what's the risk? So if you're in a market that's too big, if you're outside that band, what you want to be looking for is a sub niche or a micro niche within that space. If you're too small, then you want to expand the scope of what you're doing. So if you're in a market that's too big, you run the risk of drowning in a sea of competition. So it's akin to, we've got that raft, you've put it in the river, but now that raft is in the middle of a vast ocean. You're going to get swallowed up, right? If you're in a market that's too small, you got the raft, but you're in the tiny little pond or a puddle, you're not going to get anywhere, right? So you're looking for something that lines up with your resources, lines up with where you want to be when starting that business. So it's a pretty cool thing. For anyone who's interested in checking out the book, jump to that section because it's one that I think you'll really enjoy.
I think you've got a clear hook there. the Rosetta Stone of choosing the right market. There's definitely some pizzazz there and some sexy intrigue. So, I'm sure anyone listening right now, they're going to do just that.
Awesome.
Well, Ryan, we chatted about a ton today. So we started out with your background. We talked about, why you jumped into this whole world of building your own business. We talked about, the 4-hour work week, which that seems to be a common thread with so many successful entrepreneurs and people starting out. And, now we're, I don't even remember when that book was released. It was, 2006 or 2007, but you read it. And
it's around then. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we're now 12, 13 years later, and we're seeing so many super successful companies talk about how that was the kind of the genesis for them. So we talked about the beginning for you, and how you launched with the Scrabble tile jewelry business on Etsy, and how you then went into 23 different markets, and now you've scaled your company to $10 million per year. We talked about your 5 market must-haves. Number 1 is Evergreen, the enthusiast, urgent problem, future problems, and players with money. Mm-hmm. And then we also talked about the 4 types of people who want to start their business, right? The mission-based, the passion-based, the opportunity-based, and the undecided. We covered a lot, man. Is there anything that we left out? And of course, I can't leave out the Rosetta Stone, the that band, the trigger word that is going to basically define whether or not your market is viable or not. I think that's super, super important. Is there anything that we left out that you want to make sure that our audience knew about the book, or about choosing their own market that we didn't get to?
No, listen, we covered a lot of ground. I know we have a special link that we put together for your people to get something super special for what we decided to do. The final piece of advice before we share that is, it's something I share with all of our students. It's a big mistake I see people make is they overthink it. They let analysis paralysis take over. And you want to spend more time doing, less time thinking. And the piece of advice I share with all of our students is you don't have to get it perfect. You just have to get it going. And the best time to get it going is right here, right now, today. So don't put it off.
Awesome, Ryan. So I know that you have a special link for us so we can get a free copy for a limited time, plus over $200 in bonuses, including the audiobook, top 25 lucrative niche markets for 2019, and the Launch Your Business Mindset Training. Get that all for free by going to, what's the link, Ryan?
choosethebook.com/Joel. So
awesome.
choosethebook.com/Joel.
Perfect. So go to that link, grab that book. Ryan, it's been an absolute pleasure. This is going to get released very, very soon. Obviously, this will be released right when you're, when is the official launch date of your, it's in April, correct?
Official launch date of the book is April 30th.
Yep.
That's when the book goes live, and book will be available on that day.
Awesome. Look forward to reading the book, man. And thanks for being on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure. And for everybody else listening, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to go connect with Ryan. Go to choosethebook.com/Joel. Grab the book, pre-order the book, and grab the bonuses, depending on whenever you're listening to this right now. That link will be live. And we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.
Awesome. Thanks, Joel.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Experts Unleashed. If you're looking for new and innovative ways to design and execute your plan to become a 6 or 7-figure expert without the massive team, apply now at theperfectexpert.com.